Hi, my name is Dane Caldwell Holden, and I'm the Director of Student Services for San Jose Unified School District. Today I'll be giving you a presentation about general knowledge about education that will help make you more successful as a CASA. The first thing you need to know is a little about the people you serve. Most of the students that you'll be working with are foster youth. In the state of California, there are approximately 62,000 people that are considered foster youth. That is, they're considered wards of the court, they're living away from their families, they're living in foster or group homes. Of those students, almost 75% will work below grade level in school. In public schools, we consider that if you have a certain set of knowledge, by the end of each grade level, you're working at grade level. Because foster children get pulled out of their homes because they're dealing with problems that make them think about other things, they often fall behind in school. And every time they get pulled away from their school and pulled out of home, they get farther behind. Nearly 50% of foster youth will fail to graduate from high school. And finally, 25% will earn a GED instead of a high school diploma. And that's important because not every company recognizes a GED as the same as a diploma, and certainly the military does not. So it's very important for us that foster youth graduate from high school. Here's some more things you need to know about your clients. 43% of foster students will move 3 or more times. 11% have moved 5 or more times since they've been declared foster. Half have been retained in school. That is, if they were in 3rd grade, they finished 3rd grade, and then they are retained in 3rd grade because they don't have the skills to move on. 35% of foster youth are in special education. And each time a foster youth has to move, leave his or her school, he or she will lose 4 to 6 months of educational progress. Keep that in mind that school is only in for 10 months out of the year, so 4 to 6 months is almost half the school year. Now, a little bit about education. Who are the people that get to make decisions for children? Well, first their parents, or their guardians, or you, a court-appointed student advocate, or the court, or even the school district itself. And what kind of decisions do we make? We make enrollment decisions, placement in classes, we sign consent for classroom assignments or for special education, and we can request due process for students when we believe their rights are being violated. Our school districts are served by the County Office of Education. The County Office of Education is responsible for running community schools, for providing services that school districts can't, for operating the schools within Juvenile Hall and at the ranch. They help us with technology services. They provide oversight for schools. They're important because a lot of foster youth also have behavior problems, and those behavior problems will sometimes send them out of school districts and into county schools. The county schools are created just for students who cannot be accommodated in the general public schools. School districts, like my own, are set up to serve students sometimes from K through 8th grade, sometimes kindergarten through 12th grade. San Jose Unified is a TK, that is transitional kindergarten through 12th grade school district. We serve 33,000 students from kindergarten through 12th grade and sometimes even beyond. We are responsible for all of the academic progress for children, including the ones that you represent. We are responsible for making sure they learn at grade level. We are responsible for making sure that they graduate on time and with a diploma. Now, a little bit about law. AB 490 established foster youth rights. That is, the right for a foster youth to be enrolled immediately when they come to a school district, to be given appropriate enrollment, and to make sure that foster students are placed in general education programs. And this is important because once upon a time, if a youth came to the school district and he appeared behind in his academic development, we might place him in a special class. We might place him in an alternative school. The law says that we have to enroll students immediately and that we have to place them appropriately and hopefully in the general population and not in some special population. We also have to make sure that when a foster youth comes to our district or leaves our district, that his or her records are sent within 48 hours. Now, the only time this becomes a problem is if we can't find the records. Because you heard me say earlier that some foster youth move 3 or more times before they actually settle into a permanent foster placement, sometimes records get lost. When this happens, it may take us a little longer to track them down, but we will track them down. That's our job, and that's what we'll do. And finally, foster youth cannot be punished when they have absences from school because of court dates, because of meetings with their social workers, because of other things they need to have done that their parents would normally do. The next law, AB 167, talks about the foster graduation plan, and this law is very important for high school age foster children who might otherwise not graduate. The state of California requires that any student going through graduation is given 130 credits worth of study. That is, a number of credits each year has to be earned for each class they take and pass. Most school districts require students to pass between 180 and 240 credits to graduate. The foster youth graduation plan says that a student that is a foster youth may graduate with only 130 credits. However, and this is a big however, there are a lot of requirements. In order to qualify for the AB 167 graduation plan, a foster youth must be a foster who moves schools or school districts between 11th and 12th grade. They have to be behind grade level, that is, they can't graduate otherwise without it. And they have to be given the opportunity to take a fifth year if they choose to. What I mean by that is the foster youth between 11th and 12th grade who qualifies for this program can choose to graduate with 130 credits instead of the 180 or 220 they might otherwise have to use. They can choose to graduate early with the fewer credits or take an extra fifth year to graduate with the number of credits they need regularly to graduate. And they can flip back and forth if they want to. But this only applies if the foster youth could not graduate otherwise. Most of the foster youth in our district that are in high school are perfectly on track and are going to graduate with their class using the credits they need. We don't force them to take the graduation plan, and in fact, a student on track to graduate will not be given the foster graduation plan. So again, they have to be between 11th and 12th grade. During that time, they have to have moved at least from their school or from their school district, and they have to require the credit to graduate. If they don't move, if they're not in 11th or 12th grade, and if they don't need the credit, we do not offer it. Cumulative files, CUM records. CUM records are those gigantic manila folders that you may know about that we start carrying around from kindergarten all the way through 12th grade. These folders contain records of individualized education plans if a student is in special ed, all of the assessments that students go through each year through school, report cards, proof of enrollment, immunization records, and records that tell where the student has lived and where they've moved from. They may also include pictures. CUM files tend to be very, very thick folders that have to be purged at the end of elementary school, middle school, and high school, but they are a fascinating record of where the student has been and can be really important for you when you're trying to understand where your student's coming from and what he or she needs. A CUM record will contain things that will tell you, for example, how many times a student has flunked, whether or not he's been retained, how they've produced on assessments, whether or not they have an individualized education plan and what it says and what the disability they need is, how often they've been absent. A CUM record typically does not include a discipline record, but you can request that. You as a CASA have the right to look at all academic and counseling records for your students. You just need to come to the schools, show your identification, tell them what you need, and they'll provide you with that information. You cannot take a CUM folder with you. It has to stay at the school. However, you can request that a copy of it be made. I don't advise that you ask for an entire CUM because it can take days to make the copy, and they're quite extensive. But I do advise you to look through, pull out the information you think you need, and ask for copies of that. As a CASA, the school cannot withhold cumulative records from you. If you ask for them, we need to produce them within 5 days. Our schools at San Jose Unified keep the CUM records on the school campus. If you're working with a student that was with us at one point but has left and then now has come back, we can find those records at the district office and you can ask for them there. Educational rights holders. You as a CASA are not an educational right holder by default. An educational right holder is someone who has the right to not only look at CUM records and look at academic files, but make educational decisions for students. That person, remember, can request assessment for special education, can request 504 plans, can ask for due process. If the court makes you an educational rights holder, you have the right to ask for those things. But even if you're not an educational rights holder, you will be working with someone who is, and the two of you or three of you can team up and decide what's best for the student. On to special education. I like to say there are two types of special education. Special education in which a student has an identified disability that qualifies them for an individualized education plan, an IEP, and special education in which the student does not qualify for an individualized education plan, but does have a disability such that special accommodations need to be made to make them successful. The first is the types of disabilities that require an IEP. There are a number of them, including autism, hearing impairments, orthopedic impairments. The list goes on. You can read them. And they're significant enough that they require that the student's curriculum or instruction be modified. Modified to the point that it does not look the same as it would for any other student that does not have a specially designated disability. This is important because the students that come to you will often have IEPs but will not be aware of what they say, nor the modifications that are supposed to be given to them as part of their IEP. If you suspect a student is a special ed student or has a special ed designation, ask. Ask about the IEP, ask for someone to look it up. We all have access to records in the county, electronic records in the county for students that have been educated here, and we can get them from other counties if we need to. The other type of special education is called a 504 plan. A 504 plan is designated as a part of a federal law to provide students that have a disability that keep them from being successful accommodations that will help them be successful in class and at school. The difference between a 504 and an IEP is this. With an IEP, we make modifications to curriculum or instruction to help the student. With a 504, we offer accommodations in the classroom that will give that student the same chance of being successful as everyone else. It does not guarantee a passing grade in a class. All we do is try to create accommodations that will help students. 504s can be given for students with anxiety, with depression. They can be given to students that have some sort of temporary medical disorder that needs some sort of accommodation in class. A great number of students are given 504 accommodations because of ADHD, attention deficit hyperactivity disorder. They are created by the school and the parent and the student. If a parent or you, the CASA, ask for a 504, the team will meet with you and the student. All of the students' teachers will come together. We'll talk about how well the student's doing in class, any issues that we see, and whether or not a 504 is appropriate for them. If the 504 is appropriate, we will create a list of accommodations that we think will make the student most successful. And these can include anything from making sure the student is seated closer to the teacher, moving them away from doors or windows or distractions, chunking up their work from large assignments into multiple smaller assignments, giving them extra time on tests, giving them written versions of their study notes, and the list goes on and on. 504 accommodations are not meant to be extensive. You should try to come up with 5 to 7 that you think will work. And they have to be able to work in every single class, because once we agree to the 504 accommodations, we are legally bound to provide them for the student. A 504 should be reviewed every year. It doesn't have to be renewed every year. If the student no longer needs it, then it goes away. But while it's in place, it's a legal document and we have to honor it. If you suspect your student may need a 504 accommodation because of some issue they're having, maybe even just generalized being a foster child issue, then ask for it. Request a 504. The next section talks about referrals and assessments for special education in 504. I won't go into detail about this, but I will tell you that there are very specific timelines that the school districts have to follow in order to accommodate what you've asked for. Once you make a request for assessment or request for 504, we have very specific timelines in which we tell you we received your request, in which we tell you that we're going to assess or we will not assess, in which we will set up meetings for you to discuss things like the 504 or the outcome of assessment if need be. Again, once we create the 504 plan or create the IEP, it is a legal document and we are bound to follow it. You can help modify it. You can talk to us about whether or not it's working, but we have to follow it. This is just a brief overview of a couple types of teams you may see at school sites, of which you should be a part. The first is called an SST, a Student Study or Student Success Team. Student study teams, SST teams, get together, teachers, parent, guardian, CASA, and student sometimes, to talk about what's working for the student and what's not working for the student. The team will strategize about what might be in the best interest of the student to make him successful. The team could, for example, suggest a 504 for a student. The team could suggest that a student get tutoring or that it gets extra help in class. The team will usually come back within 30 days, look at the assessments, look at the student success, revise the SST plan. And they can do this all the way up to 90 days. If after 90 days a student is still unsuccessful and we cannot pinpoint why, sometimes we will go ahead and ask for assessment for special ed testing. The other type of team you'll typically see on a campus is a COS team, Coordination of Services team. The COS team is composed of teachers, school nurse, school psychologist, counselors, the administrators, and you, but not you, the parent. As a CASA guardian, you should come to COS team meetings if they're held at your school. COS team meetings give you perspective on your students from a multiple set of people and can be very, very enlightening when you're trying to solve problems and make the student most successful. So SST teams, COS teams, those are both held on school campuses, and you should be invited to both of those things. Finally, when you're working with school districts, it can be a little frustrating sometimes. School districts sometimes seem like very closed, very insular places where you're not welcome, you're not invited, where people do not want your input. And I'm here to tell you that's not necessarily true. Educators become educators because they want to help children, because they want children to be successful. But we don't trust people from outside of the education field. When you come to us, the best thing to assume is assume positive intent from us. Assume that we want to help, that we want to make you successful. Come prepared with questions. The more questions you ask, the more questions we can answer. Come prepared to work as a team with us. Don't just assume you can come in and steamroller the school district and get whatever you want. Come to work as a team. Speak up when you feel something is not right. A lot of times we make decisions based on our gut instincts and based on what we think is right, and sometimes our knowledge is not correct, and certainly it's not perfect. If you think something is wrong with what we're doing, if you think we're offering a service or not offering a service that your student should have, then please tell us. Bring it up, because if you don't bring it up, we probably won't notice it. Listen to what the school district's telling you. Even if they're telling you something you don't want to hear, negative information is still information, and it can be useful to you. Do your homework. Make sure you understand who you're talking to and what their role is in the school district. For example, I'm the Director of Student Services, but I'm also the foster youth liaison for our school district. If there are questions about foster youth in our district, you come to me to talk to them about it. I'm also the homeless youth liaison for our district. So if you have questions about homeless youth, you come and talk to me about it. Make sure you know who you're speaking to at the school district. If you come to a school and you can't get the information you want, or you feel that you're being stonewalled, go to the district office and ask for the director, the manager, the person in charge of student services. We will move you in the right direction. We will find the answer that you need. Because in the end, we want to help and we want the student to be successful. And finally, keep all your interactions student focused, because anything that's not student focused is wasting your time and our time. And assume positive intent. We want to help. We want you to be successful. We want your students to be successful. Thank you.